every brand has a tribe. Every business has a tribe. And what video games has been so good at doing is basically monetizing niche of niche or tribe of tribe and connecting people around the world. So what the metaverse is also allowing us to do is to find people, to basically find the people that we truly feel like we're a part of, those communities, and then empowering those communities to basically create value for themselves.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Now, today, I want to talk about the metaverse. And I might have been cynical about it a few weeks ago, but let me tell you, since I picked up an Oculus Quest 2 for, I think it was like £240, it was a bit of a bargain. I couldn't help myself, so I treated myself over the holiday period. And man, it proper felt like that game changer moment, like when the internet first arrived, when the first iPhone arrived, when the App Store arrived. It felt like that kind of moment. So I want to talk about bridging the gap between value and enterprise through video games. And I found a perfect guest who just happens to be an uber cool guy too. His name is Alexander Fernandez. He's the CEO of Streamline Media Group, an independent video games group that is dedicated to publishing and developing great games, cultivating diverse talent, and breaking barriers of interactive entertainment. And he's also a proud Latinx entrepreneur with a passion for bridging the gap between video games and traditional enterprise industries, and has also grown Streamline Media Group from a modest gaming startup to a global company with over 180 employees across 3 continents and a whole heap of brands under that media group umbrella. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Las Vegas, where Alexander Fernandez is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Neil. My name is Alexander Fernandez. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Streamline Media Group. I basically run and manage a video game developer and a metaverse builder, and have been doing so for 20 years. In other words, I do all the things that no one else wants to do, and when things break, I'm the one that's responsible.
And it's such a cool, exciting place at the moment. So I'm looking forward to digging a little bit deeper into that. But before I do, can I ask that you share your origin story, where your passion for tech came from, and what it was that put you on this path that you're on right now?
Yeah, no problem. That's a great question. So basically, I was 7 years old when my aunt convinced my mother to buy a Nintendo, the original NES, because it was cheaper than a babysitter. Nintendo, you didn't have to pay the babysitter. So that fascination with a video game at 7 years old caught my attention, and I got really into computers. And when I was 12 years old, my mother came home with a computer that she had saved 9 months of salary to buy. Because remember computers back in the 90s, and people don't remember, computers were like $5,000 for a Rinky 486, and it was not a necessity. You didn't need a computer. It was more of a nerdy thing that if you had money, you could do it. My mom came home, and I'm from an immigrant family, and I a single mom home, and it's what my mom was trying to do with this was basically to provide an opportunity for my brother and I to not, or she put it, be a statistic. And basically, from her perspective, having us use a computer would take our attention and keep us from going onto the streets, just to be frank, and kept us engaged. And her idea is if we would learn, there might be something there that we could do. That's exactly what happened. We started using this computer. I was 12, since 1993. The internet is just starting to bubble up. And basically, I'm fascinated because we're here loading video games and learning how to basically run the command line using MS-DOS and Windows 95 and learning how this works. And then realizing very quickly that the skills we had could be marketable. So we lied about our age. We told a company that we were 16 years old. Back then, social security numbers, your registry number, there was no computer system to look it up. Funny. So they're like, hey, you look 16. And they let us in. And so we began working as technologists, working in tech for companies that were now starting to digitize themselves, starting to basically implement computers for the first time in their work environment. And I grew up in Utah, so it was a real river runs through it. Prairies, basically. There's nothing there. Now it's a different story. It's the Silicon Slopes, kind of a tech center. But back then it was apple orchards, trees, and cows. There's really not much going on over there. But we had these skills, and I started to make a tremendous amount of, and I was still in high school. And that's really how it started. Technology and money, there's no going back.
What an amazing story. I love that, and how you lied about your age at 16 and what path that put you on. And of course, it was that path that led you to growing Streamline Media Group from this modest gaming-focused startup to a global company with over 180 employees across 3 continents. So kudos to you, man. But can you tell me a bit more about what it was that you set out to create at the very beginning?
Yeah, the thing is like this. Like, I think a lot of people like to see things from the end, right? They don't really want the beginning. And at this moment in time, Streamline has been a bit of a miracle. And there are days where I look at it and I think, I don't even think this company should exist. And the reason is because it was so ridiculous that whoever would. And what I mean is basically this: when we started this company, we had $15,000. We were 4 guys living in an apartment in Amsterdam, and effectively had a dream of making games. We had made a game called The Gummy Chronicles and had some success. But basically, in order for us to continue making games, we would have to find a way to actually make income. At that time, there was no indie revolution. There was no digital distribution. Everything was locked behind a walled garden of publishers and platform holders. So you had to know someone, or you had to have the deep pockets to fund your own demos. So my partners and I said, listen, we're pretty good at the skills we have as artists and engineers and designers. Why don't we sell our capabilities to other companies that are in the space? And by day services, by night, we make our own games. So it was means to an end. It just so happened that we were very good at this and started to basically realize that the industry, video games at that time, was requiring more and more talent to create a video game. So that just began to grow our business, and we got the hang of it pretty early: how to provide services, how to segment labor, how to develop technology to help accommodate and accelerate our ability to work. And we started to treat the business like a puzzle. And that puzzling of putting all the different pieces together to figure out how to make it work helped us start to grow. But then there was also the aspect of entrepreneurship, and I think it's really key. It's so implausible that it would work because we had no network, we had no formal training, we just had passion. But we were 20 years old. And when you're young, all you have is a bunch of boisterous energy, a whole lot of bravado and belief in yourself that's totally unfounded. And time makes up for lack of capital. And we basically brutalized ourselves to build the company by basically not paying ourselves much, in some cases, nothing at all, and just going out there constantly and relentlessly putting ourselves out in the market saying, listen, we have something that we want to share with you. Look at our work. People would laugh. We do it again. And just not giving up on the fact that we believed we could do this. And then that just created this kind of momentum and compounding effect where project after project started to build the reputation of our business. And then we got our big break on James Bond. We did Nightfire in 2002, and then everything just took off from there.
And the games industry has gone through an incredible transformation over the last decade and beyond. And I think now AAA titles and esports, etc., are all responsible for video games to be making more money than the movie and music industry combined for those big titles. And if we look at the last 6 months, it seems to be transforming again. We've got everyone from Nvidia, Roblox, Epic Games, and now Mark Zuckerberg all announcing big plans for the Metaverse. And anyone that digs a little bit deeper in there will find some staggering mouth-watering stats around audience figures for those online events, etc. But just to set the scene, can you tell the listeners exactly what the Metaverse is if they're just hearing about it for the first time, and how it will actually impact business strategies across the next 5 years or more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's interesting starting with the numbers. So let's context. The video games industry at the end of this year will get close to $200 billion globally. When we first started in this business 20 years ago, it was like 50, if even that.
Yeah.
Now we're in a place where when we start talking about the metaverse, we're talking about what they're now estimating to be a $1.3 trillion market.
Wow.
So you already see, $1.3 trillion. And the reason for this is because the metaverse is nothing more than a digital transformation of economy. And economy means every industry in any part of the world will effectively be a part of the metaverse. Now, before your listeners turn me off and say this is crap, let me go ahead and explain why. 30 years ago, let's take ourselves back to 1994, 93. If I would have come up to you and said, your business will have a thing called a website, and everyone will go to that first, you would have been like, yeah, okay, kid, I don't even have a computer at home. Or if I would have told you that a series of network computers, TCP/IP, would be how you would shop, entertain, live your life, post intimate details on something called Facebook, you'd be like, no, kid, I'm never going to do that. Mm-hmm. And that 30-year transformation is exactly what's just about to happen with the metaverse. And here's what I mean by that. The metaverse is a catchphrase, like saying internet. It describes business models. It describes basically new forms of immersive experiences, leveraging video game technology in order to imagine three-dimensional spaces. But also what the metaverse does is it provides utility to the data that we are generating every day. What I mean by that is this, is that everyone on listener probably has a smartphone. Maybe they're listening to us on a smartphone. They ask Siri or Google to take them to a location. The display of GPS coordinates on a three-dimensional map, or in this case, three-dimensional represented map on a 2D plane, that's the metaverse. And we've had access to the metaverse since GPS has been around. And you think that a computer tells us how to get somewhere. There's the metaverse's first implementation. What Meta, the new Facebook thing, and NVIDIA and all the rest of them are doing is saying, listen, the last 30 years is going to happen in the next 10 years. But what we're going to be doing is capturing these demographic changes that have happened where there is a generation where video games have always existed. Internet has always existed. Mass communication, 5G, in terms of instant data access, has always existed. We're going to leverage the fact that they grew up this way and then now basically take a cue from the games industry by bringing high-end production value, immersive experiences that basically do behavioral traits that basically say, listen, do this and I'll give you that, as a way to build niche community and as a way to basically commercialize and monetize consumers, but also how to entertain and educate them. Thing is, in the simple way to look at this is that everything in the physical world will have a digital twin. And what I mean by that is effectiveness, is that the metaverse is a place where your physical and digital persona become a unified reality. So if you buy yourself a high-end pair of Adidas, the Adidas will have a digital twin. They basically put on your avatar that you will use to traverse this metaverse environment to do the things you want to do. Because effectively, people really do care about how their avatars look. That's why Fortnite, Roblox, why there's hundreds of millions of dollars, billions in some cases, being basically spent on digital items that are nothing more than a t-shirt. But fashion brands have got into it. So ultimately, I think what ends up happening here is that brands and enterprise will find themselves in the same situation they found themselves in 94, 95, where if you don't have a website, do you really exist? If you don't have a metaverse, do you exist? And that's just the way consumer behavior has changed. It's the way basically everyday humanity has changed, especially when you think about the fact that we're in a pandemic. We're not able to go see each other physically a lot of times unless, well, we talked about that already, unless you're in certain demographics.
Yeah.
The reality is that people still want to connect, and the metaverse gives us that opportunity to do so in a safe way.
I completely agree with you there. And the figures around those digital clothing for avatars, etc., is just mouth-watering. It really is. And I would say anyone that doubts everything that you've just said, I always say to anyone that disbelieves the way we're heading here is have a look at two videos. There's one with Bill Gates on the Letterman show, and that was about 94 or 95, where he's talking about the internet and what it's going to deliver. And David Letterman and everyone in the audience laughed and mocked like he was some kind of heretic. And we all know how that ended up. And equally, I think it was just a few years later, David Bowie was talking about how the internet was going to completely transform the music industry. I think he was talking with Jeremy Paxman. And again, that video's on YouTube. And the interviewer just didn't understand it at all. But we know where we ended up again. It's fairly easy to see where we're heading.
I guess the thing is that it's suspension of disbelief. I think it's really what it comes down to, is that we're in a place where at this moment in time, people who basically have a hard time seeing where technology is taking us, they just have to take a step back for a second and use their imagination. I'm sure some of the listeners now are on that smart. Let's just imagine 20 years ago, this thing didn't even exist.
Yeah.
Now let's think about what did exist. Nokia 5110, a little brick phone with a green screen where you could play this little line thing called Snake. Funny that video games was on that device back then, but this is what we're talking about. Just think about the progress of technology in your own lifetime or in the past 15 years. And then just say, gee, what happens when there's dedicated people that are super intelligent, super creative, and super hungry, applying their skills towards innovation. And that's what we're going to see. That's happening right now.
And I suppose the big question is, what role do you see yourselves at Streamline Media Group playing in the metaverse? And are there any particular use cases that excite you right now?
Yeah, so I think what it comes down to is what gets me excited about the metaverse there's really a couple things. The first side of it, basically from a practical utilitarian perspective, is the ability to basically finally bring together groups of people, niche of niche, find your tribe, give them entertainment, give them commerce, give them social interaction that they're otherwise not getting. Streamline likes to build things. We love to puzzle. We love challenges, creative challenges, technical challenges, design challenges. But we love those challenges for our own products, but also for working with other people. So working with major brands. So like Balenciaga came to us at the end of middle part of last year and said, listen, we need to bring our fall 2021 fashion lineup to the world. What do you guys think we can do? And we're like, let's decide about video games. So we looked at basically bringing that, created an engine, or utilizing Unreal, created an immersive experience, streamed it to 120 countries in 7 days. And that effectively redefined the way they were able to interact with their audiences who were loyal Balenciaga followers, and people were curious about what a major fashion brand was doing with game technology. That use case right there is reach millions of people at the same time, give them the same experience through the minds of the creatives who actually create the products that these audiences love, and give them something they've never seen before. That there was a huge challenge. It was fun, but then you think about this. Balenciaga found its tribe. The tribe of Balenciaga connected with them. Every brand has a tribe. Every business has a tribe. And what video games has been so good at doing is basically monetizing niche of niche or tribe of tribe and connecting people around the world. So what the metaverse is also allowing us to do is to find people, to basically find the people that we truly feel like we're a part of, those communities, and then empowering those communities to basically create value for themselves, whether it's through the usage of basically blockchain, smart contracts, or cryptocurrency connected to immersive experiences like Fortnite or effectively Roblox or any other things like Sandbox or the other ones that are coming online, and connecting them together. But then also giving us the ability to fund and finance human endeavor. And here's what I mean by this, is that the metaverse is going to allow us, and is allowing us right now, to connect the next 2 billion people that are coming from Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa. These societies jumping into this part of the game, skipping the last 30 years to go straight into this, and we're being able to leverage their capabilities, their know-how, and their talent, and applying it to effective this group consciousness. The social economic impact that comes from participation in the tech economy or in the games economy is substantial. And here's just a simple number behind that. In the United States, basically, poverty is established at $30,000 or less. That's effectively what they call working poor. Working in the video games industry gives you a 6-figure salary. Instantaneously, you've changed your life. I know this because I live this way. This is why I'm here, because my mother bought a computer when I was 12 years old, changed my life, and then took me to a place I never thought possible. I'm seeing this all over the world now, especially in the emerging world. And those emerging markets, where it's predicated on youth and it's predicated on a person's will to learn, basically means we're adding all of this capability into our effective ecosystem. And this new GDP that is being established is going to basically revolutionize society overall. So when we think about social economic impact, and we think about basically the wealth of nations, well, the wealth of nations truly are the people. And I know this sounds very hippie for some people out there being like, okay, go eat some granola. But let's be honest about this. The future of our society isn't based on whether or not we know how to manufacture television. It's the ideas that come from all of society and the ability to realize those ideas, to fund those endeavors, to take what effectively is human capital and leverage that into the next generation of basic products and services and ingenuity that transforms our world. That is what the promise of the metaverse is doing, because those bridges that we're building to all of these different parts of the world means we're basically getting an upgrade in processing power. Our human consciousness is what's going to that next step. And that is where Streamline, us as a business, it's where we've been for 20 years, leveraging new parts of the world that people didn't know. We're actively involved, actively developing, and then applying it to this old world with this new world and creating an entirely new world. That's what makes me excited.
Wow, incredibly cool. And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research on you. Don't worry, I didn't come across anything bad. But what I did learn is that you currently serve on the Gamescom advisory board. Can you tell me a bit more about that and what that involves?
Yeah, basically, this is, I just actually wrapped up on the Gamescom one, but let me go ahead and give you an idea of what it was.
Sure.
So one of the main things is basically this, is that through my career, I've had the fortunate opportunity to work with organizations that were looking to spread knowledge and help build up our industry better. The Gamescom Advisory Board came out of basically working with the organizers since their first one, which was happening in Leipzig, and then it moved to Cologne. So I've been working with these guys since 2003, 2004. The idea is basically that knowledge needs to be built and it needs to be codified in a way where basically new generations can access it. One of the things that's historically tragic about the games industry is that our knowledge walks out the door at 5 p.m. And when it leaves the industry, which a lot happens because of the instability and the up and down cycles of game development, we lose that for good. So organizations like Gamescom that are basically first events, but then they have bodies that basically retain this information, is to ensure that we basically spread and basically develop that next generation of people. But there's also groups like the Global Games Jam, which is the other one that I was serving with, which is all about basically spreading game development to the four corners of the world. It's great to be a part of these organizations that are looking at it more than just a profit enterprise, but a people enterprise. And when you look at that, it just means we're basically compounding and making it possible for new participants to enter and not make the mistakes that we've made before. I think any industry that basically understands to codify and keep records of where they've been will basically be in a better position to accelerate their growth and basically bring in new innovation because we're not making the same stupid mistakes over and over again. That's the key thing.
And another thing, technology is often accused of having a big diversity problem, and for good reason too. In the video game industry, it's a little bit more positive, especially in storytelling in games like The Last of Us 2, for example. But what do you think the best ways to promote diversity in the video game industry? And do you think it's ahead of traditional businesses in Silicon Valley?
Look, man, I mean, I'm Hispanic. My last name is, I grew up in the United States, and I can tell you how many Hispanic CEOs in video games there are. I've never met them. Yeah. I know myself. So it's not a question on, do we have a diversity issue? Of course we do. We have a diversity issue. We have a problem with gender. We have all those same issues that plague the tech industry. And really more because in the end, we're very introverted at times, and we revel in our inability to grow up. At the same time, I think really what it comes down to is that if we're going to really fix diversity, it's not a token hire. It's looking at the executives, the board, the directors, the senior leadership, and growing people that are representative of the industry we work in. Because one of the things that's just a reality of the games industry is that the majority of people who buy games, especially in the United States, I think it was close to 53%, minorities. The number of minorities making games, we're lucky if it's even 2.
Wow.
And that's just the reality. So we're great at purchasing, but we're not in the decision-making or the creative process. It's changing, albeit at a slow pace, but it's effectively making sure the organizations, especially the big platform holders and the publishers, realize that the lip service of we're doing our best by going to basically Ivy League schools and looking for talent that honestly doesn't even get into Ivy League schools is crap. And basically you have to do a bit more. You actually have to realize that this industry is not just for some of us. It is for all of us. And I think that's something where at Streamline, we have 45 nationalities and 25 different languages at the studio. Diversity is as important as it is to having gender diversity. I mean, our top leadership at our company, we have close to 50% of the people who run our business, they're women. And it just makes sense across the board. But it's not for the sake of saying, look at me, I'm amazing. It's just to say ideas are everywhere. Potential is everywhere. Why would I limit myself to a small group of people when I know there's millions of people to access? That just makes good business sense, and it also just makes sense to me. And I think that ultimately in the end, as we see this new guard take over, because the boomers are retiring and they're starting to pass their way, I know it's a different universe, it's a different world, but this new world is basically being built by people that are like myself and that are different from me. They're saying like, look, enough's enough. We need to have the world participating or else we're not going to make it. So I think that's also then just an understanding that we have to move away from this extractive capital model where basically it's a race to the bottom and just realize that we really can make more by investing into more. And that just means dealing and talking with people who don't look like me. But that's the beauty of the metaverse. It won't even matter about who the person is represented by. It could be a cup, a pair of eyeglasses, an iPad. I won't be judging them based on what I think they are. It'll be based on how they treat me, which is the equalizer. That's what the metaverse effectively allows you to do.
Yeah, 100% with you on that. And I think there is a big realization now that any business or organization cannot serve a wide audience if they don't have the diversity in their own boardrooms or meeting rooms, etc. And there's also a big focus on innovation now, and for good reason. But you're not going to get great ideas and innovative ideas from a meeting room full of middle-aged white dudes. You're going to need voices from all over to challenge each other's beliefs and everything that they say, and then that's where the magic happens. But is that something that was really important to you in establishing this culture of innovation and multicultural environment for your employees so they can all thrive and you can watch that magic happen?
Absolutely. The thing is, you think about the people who founded Streamline. None of us are from the same country. None of us speak the same. We spoke English as a common language, but none of us were from anywhere near next to each other. But what we had was a shared passion for game making. It's amazing how you can find your tribe based on things. You put a company around the idea that we love games and we want to make games and we want to express creativity and we want to solve challenges, irrespective of what someone looked like or what they believed in. That's a strength. I think, honestly, once you get past the stupidities of what separate us and you look at the realities of what bring us together, you get to a better place. And as an organization, our company has survived and succeeded. In fact, I would say we would thrive because of the fact that we don't look at the basic and obvious things and we look at the higher ideas. What are we trying to do? And if we effectively can link on that and connect on that, then everything else is just gravy. And that's effectively how we built this company. And we built it, and we call ourselves a startup company. We starved our way up. We had no investment capital. We had no formal training. There was no reason for us to exist. That's why I say I always find it just like incomprehensible that we even do. And it's not humility, that's just reality, because everything that traditionally says you must have to be a success, we had nothing. All we had was time, talent, and a tremendous amount of willpower, grit to go through it. But everything else, network, good family, amazing names, didn't have any of that. In the end, you realize you really don't need any of that. You just need to be able to connect and work with people, because in the end, we're all just people. That's all this is. So I think it is important. And for us, we continue to keep training, keep building, because in the end, I'm not going to stop finding that next kid that comes from sub-Sahara Africa or the kid that comes from Nicaragua. I want them to come work with me as long as they basically believe and want to be in this industry and they believe in what we believe. If they don't, no big deal. They'll work for someone else. There's plenty of other companies out there. That's the beautiful thing about choice.
Absolutely love that and everything you guys stand for. And before we started recording today, we were talking about a lot of things that concern or frustrate us with the current life. But what is it that excites you about life? What's going to be your big focus?
Honestly, it's the metaverse. I think we're at a moment in time that as humanity, and I always look at things from a macro perspective, because I think micro is important when we're on the ground dealing with some specific things that we've got to solve, but you always have to look at life from a macro perspective. And that's where I find a lot of comfort. I think we're at a moment in time that has happened a handful of times in the history of our civilizations. And what I mean is that this is a time where finance, technology, art, culture, business have aligned and they're equally as strong. But they're now the confluence of them coming together is about to create an explosive, innovative moment that basically really is a step function up to the next level of what it means to be human. And the last time that I saw this, well, I wasn't alive, but last time we saw this as a collective, you could look at just what advertising was in the 1950s and 60s. The idea of advertising, how it came to be. The Industrial Revolution, steam, electricity, oil, gas. Or we go down to the 1500s with the Renaissance, effectively banking and art, science, trade. These moments define basically what we are. And I believe what is happening now, what we're going into, is that next step function. It makes me so excited because it is the moment where we access the world's capability. And that world talent really means a lot, because that then means that kid, or that boy, the girl, whatever, anywhere, gets that opportunity to be a part of this. You're changing lives. And it just comes down to a simple thing that I lived my life because of technology. I'm only here because of technology. I met you because of a decision that was made when I was a child.
Yeah.
That opportunity and that understanding of how life functions, how it works, the ability for us, for the self-individual, to go do that for someone else, at least create the environment where the possibility could happen, that's amazing for me. And that's a pay it forward moment, because honestly, in the end, technology changes lives, business changes lives, but we can do it in a way that makes sense. And for me personally, I'd rather do it in a way that's constructive and leads to empowerment than one that just basically treats people like garbage. That's just not the life I want to have. So I think that's really for next year, that opportunity really is to unlock the next 2 billion people to come into the metaverse, to come and be a part of game making, game development, immersive experiences, technology, and to be participatory in this brave new world that basically is changing everything. I think that's going to be exciting.
Wow, man, that is absolutely beautiful what you just said there, and a great moment to end the show on. But before we do, I always like to have a bit of fun with my guests. We begin the podcast talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. I'm now going to ask you, what has been the soundtrack to your origin story and your career in tech? Is there a song and story you can share with us? And we'll add it to our Spotify playlist. Maybe it's a song from a game. I'm curious where you're going to go with this.
It's funny. I grew up with hip hop.
Yeah.
Straight up. Hip hop is it. But there's obviously, for me, Tupac, specifically Tupac, at the very beginning of the history of the business and just life in general. He has a song called Rear View that looking through the world, or staring at the world through my rear view is basically what it is. You've got to hear this track, specifically because there's a moment where he just starts talking about the game of life. Anyone who listens to that song long enough can decipher what he's talking about. It unlocks the next level of thinking. And then I can't go in there without Jay-Z. Let's just be real. Jay-Z, if you want to learn how to run a business, just listen to Jay-Z. You can just listen to the print from the beginning to the end. All you need to know about running a business is literally in those tracks. That's all you need to know. There's your business school for free. But you got to listen, and you have to get past what you think the words mean and hear what he's actually saying. I think that is the key thing. It's something that the music is a great unlock. And then honestly, just listening to the music of people who come up and basically struggle to get to where they are helps you get to where you want to be. So that's what I'd recommend.
Awesome, man. You're dropping value bombs all over the place today. I absolutely love that. I got the hairs on the back of my neck stood up there. You're describing that Tupac song, man. But for anyone listening that want to find out more information about what you're doing at Streamline, your vision for the future, maybe look at some videos or even contact your team or join your community, what's the best starting point?
All right. So basically, the first place would be on our website, streamlinemediagroup.com, on Twitter, Streamline News. Me personally, I'm at Starbup with an underscore, STARVEUP _. And basically, I have a podcast called Video Games Real Talk, where I talk about the business of video games. And if you want to hear anything that has to be about how you make it in the games industry, feel free to listen to it. And we've had some incredible guests. And honestly, we talk about what it means to actually be in the business of the video game industry. I think in the end, for anyone listening out there, if you want to make it, understand how it's made, but also understand how the game is played, because you got to understand both the production and the business. It's not one or the other. That's the power. Load them both, and you will succeed.
Oh, absolutely love that. I will get links to everything you mentioned there, including your podcast, so anyone can find you nice and easily. Love chatting with you about putting what the metaverse is in a language that everyone can understand and bridging the gap between value and enterprise through video games, promoting diversity in the video game industry. We covered so much today, but all that washed down with your very personal story and finishing with a great track with Rear View there. But more than anything, just thank you for taking the time to share it with me today.
Honestly, thank you so much and appreciate what you're doing out there. Anything we can do to help, just let us know.
So I cannot thank Alexander enough for coming on the podcast today and sharing his valuable insights into the entrepreneurial journey that he's taken, how he became successful at what he does, and covering so many topics around the metaverse there and bridging that gap between value and enterprise all through video games. And kudos to him as well for establishing an innovative multicultural environment for his employees. So much about what he's doing here really excites me, and I do hope I get to grab that beer with him at my next tech conference in Vegas. But as always, let me know your thoughts, and you can do that directly. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find. You can email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Right, I'm going to go back into the metaverse now. I'm going to get my headset back on and hammer away at the drums on a game called Smash Drums. If anyone out there got a Oculus Quest 2 for Christmas, give that one a try, man. It certainly unleashed the inner drummer in me. But thank you for listening as always, and until next time.